If you're over 40 and your belly fat seems to be the last thing to disappear, there's a good chance it isn't because you're eating too much. It's because your body is receiving the wrong signals. So, most people think that belly fat is simply stored calories, but it isn't, especially after 40. Belly fat is one of the most metabolically active tissues in your body. It responds to hormones like cortisol and insulin far more than people realize. So, if you're only focusing on eating less and trying to exercise more, you're probably fighting the symptom instead of fixing the cause. And in this video, I'm going to show you the 3 signals that determine whether your body stores belly fat or starts releasing it. And by the end, you'll understand exactly what's driving that stubborn belly fat and what you can do to change it. Before we get into the 3 signals, we need to understand why belly fat behaves differently from fat everywhere else. So, there are 2 main types of belly fat. The first is a fat under your skin that you can pinch. That's called subcutaneous fat. The second surrounds your organs. So, your liver, your pancreas, your intestines. That one is called visceral fat. And it's a visceral fat that we're most concerned about. Unlike subcutaneous fat, visceral fat is metabolically active. It releases inflammatory chemicals, it disrupts hormone function, it increases insulin resistance, and it's strongly linked with cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes as well. What's interesting is you don't even have to look overweight to be carrying too much visceral fat. Researchers call this TOFI, thin outside, fat inside. One of the simplest ways to estimate your risk is measuring your waist. So, a high risk is flagged for men at 102 centimeters or 40 inches or more, and for women at 88 centimeters, which is 35 inches or more. Men who are under 94 centimeters, which is 37 inches, and women under 80 centimeters, which is 31 and a half inches, are considered lower risk. So, that single measurement often tells us far more about metabolic health than the number on the scales. So, the obvious question becomes, why does your body choose to store fat there in the first place? The answer comes down to signals. So, your body doesn't know that you're trying to lose weight, it simply responds to signals it's receiving. Now, let's look at the first one. The first signal is stress, and this is where most people accidentally make the problem worse. Visceral fat cells contain far more cortisol receptors than fat cells elsewhere in your body. Cortisol is your primary stress hormone. When it's elevated for long periods, your body becomes much more likely to store fat around your organs. Historically, this made sense. Stress often meant food scarcity. Your body stored energy where it could access it quickly if it needed it. The problem is that your body doesn't distinguish between different kinds of stress. So, things like sleeping 5 hours, living on caffeine, constant dieting, too much high intensity exercise, inflammation, long work days, your body sees all of that as stress. And when those stress signals stay high for weeks or even months, and for some people, years, your body shifts into protection mode. Instead of burning energy freely, it becomes much more conservative and it slows things down, it protects stored energy. And one of the places it prefers to store that energy is around your organs. This is something I see all the time. People are eating less, they're doing more cardio, they're trying harder than ever to try to lose weight, but their body is receiving one message, and that is that we are under threat. We need to hold on to energy, and the solution here is not doing less, it's reducing the physiological stress your body is dealing with. So, we want to be doing things like sleeping 7 to 9 hours as much as possible. We need to stop thinking about every workout needing to be really high intensity and something that destroys your body. We need to eat enough protein and enough food overall to support recovery. And when those simple changes improve, fat loss is also going to improve without having to change calories at all because you've changed the signal that your body is responding to. The second signal is insulin. The first signal tells your body whether it's safe, and this second one tells your body whether it should store or release energy. So, insulin's job is to move nutrients into your cells, and that's a good thing. The problem is when insulin stays elevated all day. When that happens, your body spends very little time accessing stored body fat for energy. And this doesn't mean carbohydrates are bad. Far from it. The issue is constant eating. So, frequent snacking, especially highly processed foods, and never giving insulin a chance to come back down. One of the simplest changes I make with my clients is extending the overnight fasting window. So, this is not extreme fasting, it's not skipping meals, it's just finishing dinner earlier and then waiting until you eat breakfast the next morning. So, no having dinner and then having a snack. You have dinner and then you wait till breakfast. And for most people, that's around 12 hours. That's usually what I recommend anyway, especially for women. I don't recommend going more than 12 hours. Men can go maybe to 14. But this gives insulin a chance to fall. And when insulin is lower, your body becomes much better at accessing stored fat for energy. And the other piece here is food quality. So, eating protein, eating whole foods, and eating meals that actually satisfy you. When your meals contain enough protein and enough food overall, you're naturally going to snack less anyway. So insulin will stay elevated less often, and food decisions are going to become easier, and your metabolism spends more time in that fat burning mode that we want. The third signal is muscle. This is where most people think I'm going to tell them muscle burns more calories, and that is true, but it's actually the least interesting reason that strength training works. And muscle is where a huge amount of your mitochondria live. Mitochondria are responsible for taking the food you eat and converting it into ATP. That's the energy every cell in your body runs on. The more muscle you have and the more you use it, the greater your body's capacity to turn calories into usable energy instead of storing them. Muscle also acts like a sponge for glucose. So every time you strength train, your muscles become more insulin sensitive, which is a good thing. That means more of the food you eat gets directed toward movement, recovery, and muscle repair instead of to fat storage. And this becomes even more important after 40 because as we age, we naturally start to lose muscle. And that process is called sarcopenia. Less muscle means fewer mitochondria, lower insulin sensitivity, and less energy production overall, and also a greater tendency to store fat. And this is why I recommend resistance training to all of my clients. And it's not because it burns a huge amount of calories during the workout, but because it changes your metabolism between workouts. So we want to be aiming for 2 or 3 strength sessions each week. And that's enough to make a meaningful difference here. We can use body weight, dumbbells, machines, it doesn't matter. Consistency matters far more than the equipment that you're using. If you look at all 3 of these, they really come back to one idea. Your body doesn't know you're trying to lose weight. It simply responds to the signals it's receiving: the stress signal, the insulin signal, and the muscle signal. Most people try to lose belly fat by forcing the calorie equation harder. They eat less, they add more cardio, and they add more restriction overall. But if those 3 signals stay the same, your body has very little reason to let go of the fat it's protecting. But when you improve sleep and recovery, you reduce the stress signal. When you improve your eating rhythm, you improve the insulin signal. And when you build and use your muscle, you improve your body's ability to turn food into energy instead of storing it. That's why I spend far less time worrying about calories than most people expect. Calories matter, but the signals that determine what your body does with those calories matter just as much. If you improve those signals consistently, fat loss becomes much easier because your physiology starts working with you instead of against you. So if you found this video helpful, subscribe to the channel and like this video. I'd really appreciate it. And if you have any questions, please just drop them below and I'll get them answered for you.